Do you think I'm stupid? Collins, do you think I can't see what's been going on?
Runor's voice cracked as she slammed the door behind her with a force that shook the entire apartment. The loud sound reverberated through the walls, bouncing off the glass windows, the marble floors, and the expensive furniture they had chosen together. But Collins, he barely even flinched. Do you know how humiliating it was for me to find out like this? From strangers, Collins. Strangers. People were laughing behind my back while I walked around like a fool, thinking I had the perfect man. Look at this. Runor stormed into the living room, holding the stack of photographs in her shaking hands. She threw them onto the glass table with so much force that a few of them slipped onto the floor. The rest remained scattered across the table. Collins, lounging on the couch in his sweatpants, didn't even bother to lift his head from his phone. He remained so calm, so completely unaffected by the storm that was growing around him. That made her even angrier. Who is she, Collins? Who is Anita? Runor's voice was no longer trying to hide the deep hurt. Her emotions were sharp and cutting. She could feel her hands clenching into fists. She was standing on the edge of a cliff and she could not hold back any longer. And don't you dare tell me she's just a friend. Friends don't meet up in hotels. Friends don't go to secret trips to Ghana. Friends don't send messages saying they can't wait to see you in bed. Collins finally looked up, but instead of answering, he just gave her the same calm stare. The same blank, emotionless gaze he always had when he was trying to control the situation. Runor took a step forward, her breath shallow, her eyes blazing with fury. She didn't even care about anything else in that moment. "You think I'm stupid?" she whispered. The words hit him like a slap. She dropped her handbag to the floor and took another step towards him. "You think I don't see what's happening? All these lies, all these games? You think I wouldn't find out? I'm not blind, Collins. I can see you. I can see exactly what you're doing." Her voice was shaking now, but she didn't stop. "I gave you everything. My love, my time, my trust. I put everything into you, Collins. I believed in you." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. But it was a laugh filled with pain and disbelief. "And for what?" she continued, her voice shaking. "So you could play me like this?" Collins, still sitting there like he had all the time in the world, opened his mouth to speak. "Runor, please." "No!" Runor interrupted, her voice louder now, sharper than ever. "You don't get to talk right now. You don't get to twist this. I gave you everything, Collins. My love, my loyalty, my time. Do you even understand what you've done to me?" Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt like she couldn't breathe. Her heart ached with betrayal, her vision blurred. She wanted to break down right there, wanted to fall to the floor and sob. But instead, she pulled herself together. She would not cry, not in front of him. "I built my whole life around you, Collins. I turned down opportunities, ignored the warnings from my friends, and chose to believe in you. And for what? So you could cheat on me? So you could lie to me? So you could betray me?" Her voice broke then, but she still did not allow the tears to fall. She couldn't. "You disgust me," she spat, her words bitter. For the first time, Collins looked uncertain. The usual cocky smirk on his face had faded. His eyes showed something. Fear, regret. She didn't know, but whatever it wasn't enough to make her change her mind. Finally, she grabbed her handbag from the floor and started walking towards the door. But as she reached the handle, she turned to face him one last time, her voice steady but cold. "I'm leaving, Collins. And when I come back, you'd better be gone." She stepped out of the door, closing it behind her. And this time, she wasn't coming back to fix anything. She was coming back to destroy him. 3 years ago, Runor had always prided herself on being strong, independent, and self-sufficient. She had no need for a man to complete her life. She had built a successful event planning company on her own with her own hands, and she had earned every bit of respect she received. But when Collins walked into her life, something about him disarmed her. He wasn't like the other men she usually met in Lagos, the flashy, arrogant ones who only cared about money and status. No, Collins was calm, thoughtful, and he had this way of making her feel safe. He wasn't like any man she had ever met before. They met at a cafe one afternoon, and at first, she had dismissed him. Not her type, she thought. He was persistent in a way that made her laugh. Soon, they were spending hours together, sharing stories, learning about each other, and before she knew it, she was falling real hard. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she could trust him. Maybe he was the one. For the first 6 months, everything felt perfect. Collins was her biggest cheerleader. He told her she was beautiful, smart, talented. He told her words that she had never really believed about herself until he said them. He was kind, always thoughtful, and he always made time for her. He was supportive of her work and encouraged her to follow her dreams. They talked about their future together, about marriage, about having kids. Runor thought, "This is it. I finally found someone who sees me." But then, Collins started having business trips more often. At first, Runor thought it was just work. But as time passed, she started to notice small things. The way he would glance at his phone and hide the screen when she walked into the room. The way he would avoid answering certain questions about where he was or who he was talking to. But she ignored those things. It's just work, she told herself. He's just busy. Runor never thought it would happen, but when she found out about Anita, everything changed. Anita wasn't just a friend, she was the other woman. Runor wasn't someone who acted on gut feelings. She needed proof, so she did something that felt foreign to her. She called Toby her best friend, who also happened to be a private investigator. "I need to know the truth, Toby," Runor said, her voice firm. Toby had gathered all the information in just a few days. "Runor, this guy has a lot of women," Toby had said when she handed over the folder. Runor's heart sank. Toby gave her pictures, receipts, and screenshots of conversations that revealed just how deep Collins' lies had gone. Now that she knew the truth, Runor had a decision to make. She would leave him, or she would destroy him. She chose the latter. Runor reached out to Anita, Cynthia, and Blessing. Each woman was angry at first, but after seeing the proof, they all realized they had been lied to. Runor had a plan. They would expose Collins at the engagement party he was planning for them. The night was supposed to be about celebration. Instead, it was about the truth. Runor stood at the front of the room, facing Collins and all their guests. With one swift motion, she took the microphone and said, "Thank you all for coming tonight, but before we celebrate love, let's talk about the truth." The room felt silent. Runor stepped back and gestured to the door. Anita, Cynthia, and Blessing walked in, each holding a microphone. The room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered, shocked by what they had just witnessed. Runor walked away from Collins, her heart filled with triumph. But for him, it was the beginning of the end. Collins lost everything. His business collapsed, his reputation ruined, and the world saw him for who he truly was: a liar, a cheater, a fraud. The aftermath was just as devastating as Runor had imagined. Collins could no longer hide behind his charm, his smooth words, or his perfect facade. The world knew the truth. Every day, the news about his betrayal and plagiarized app spread faster than wildfire. His investors pulled out. People who once admired him turned their backs, and every social media account, every news outlet was filled with headlines that mocked him. His business, once thriving, was finished. But what hurt him the most wasn't the loss of his money or status. It was that Runor had seen through him, that she had figured out the truth before he could hide it any longer. He tried to reach out to her. He begged. He promised he would change. But Runor, she had moved on. For the first time in months, Runor felt free. She had finally rid herself of the toxic relationship, the lies, the manipulation. She focused on what she did best, building her career and helping others. Runor was now more successful than she had ever been. But this time, she wasn't doing it for anyone else. She was doing it for herself. Runor started to feel like she could breathe again. No longer was she hiding behind the mask of a perfect life. She had broken free from the chains that had held her. And the best part, she had come out of this experience stronger, wiser, and more determined. As months passed, Runor's healing deepened. She began dating again, not to fill a void, but because she was ready. She was ready for someone who would truly love her, someone who would value her the way she deserved. But this time, Runor knew better. She could spot the red flags. She could tell the difference between a man who was truly genuine and one who would hurt her again, and she wouldn't settle for less. One evening, months after the party, Runor stood on her apartment's balcony, looking out at the city. The sun was setting in the distance, and the sky was a beautiful shade of orange. She thought back to everything she had been through, the pain, the betrayal, but most importantly, the strength she had found in herself. Runor smiled as she thought about how far she had come. She had not only survived the worst moments of her life, but she had thrived. Collins might have destroyed the life they had, but in doing so, he had pushed Runor towards greatness, and that was his final mistake. Months later, the day came when Runor opened the door to her brand new office. It was all hers. She stood at the door and looked around the walls, covered with photos of her events, her work, and her accomplishments. She had created this life she had earned. No man, no relationship, no betrayal could ever take that away from her. Runor knew she had learned the hardest lesson of all. Her worth was never tied to anyone but herself. She smiled, taking a deep breath as she stepped into her office. The past was behind her. The future, it was hers to conquer. The end.